Yes, big round of applause for Adam Zucker. And I'd like to introduce Matt Colbert from Bend the Arc. So a little bit of background on Matt here. Matt's a facilitator and educator and has been lucky enough to call the East Bay home for the past 2 years. He's originally from New York and started his work in building intentional and justice-centered Jewish communities as a student at Vassar. He's carried that commitment over to Bend the Arc in his role as program manager for the Jeremiah Fellowship, where he supports a national cohort of young Jews in engaging in progressive organizing and education. So Adam, congratulations on a beautiful and important and timely film. I was hoping we could start by hearing just a little bit about what led you to this story. Why did you decide to make this film?
Well, the answer why I came to make this film is pretty simple. It's really 2 words: Donald Trump. And I don't mean it to be funny, I mean it's fine to laugh, but in 2015 and 2016, I was really horrified by what was going on in that campaign. And like many people I know, when the election happened, it was really personally and collectively devastating. And I really didn't know what to do, and I, like many people, was just talking to a lot of people and reaching out and talking. And a few days later, a friend of mine invited me to a Muslim-Jewish kind of discussion circle at a local synagogue, and not my own. And I went, and people were sharing their feelings, and someone stood up from the Muslim community and said, I just want you to know what's been happening just since the election about people being pressured to leave buildings in Queens and women being harassed on the street for wearing hijab. And I just, every film I've made, there's always just been this moment I said, I have to do something. And that was the moment. That woman actually was Debbie Almontazer, who I didn't know, I knew of. And I just knew at that moment I had to try to do something. And it wasn't necessarily make a feature documentary. I thought maybe I'd make some short films for the web, or maybe make an advocacy film or fundraising film for an organization. And I actually did a couple of those. But I just felt a need to do something and to try to do it quickly, which is a little difficult with documentaries. And I just started. And the other thing was, I realized, I mean, I've lived in New York my entire life, and New York is obviously a very, if not the most diverse city in the country. And while I actually knew a lot about Islam, like probably more than most other non-Muslims, just because I'm interested in religion and I read a lot, I didn't know any Muslim people. And I was like embarrassed to acknowledge that. And I kind of felt this simultaneous need to go out and try to get to know these people that I really felt not needed my help. They could take care of themselves, but I just kind of needed to connect in some way. And that was really the impulse that started this whole project.
And so given that those relationships weren't in place, how did you go about seeking out the incredible folks who star in your film? I mean, some of these characters are just deeply inspiring. How did you find them?
Yeah, you know, I often say, like, if I go to a cocktail party, sometimes I'm happy talking to people. Sometimes I feel rather shy and a little, like, it's hard for me to talk to people I don't know. But as a filmmaker, I mean, not only is that my job, but that's the most fun I have, is getting to meet people and to listen to them. And it's actually relatively easy. You know, one thing leads to another, but I just say, look, I'm looking to meet interesting people, and I call them up and say, can I come out and, you know, can we go out for tea or something? And really, I just spent a couple of months doing that. And I mean, the specifics of how I met this or that, I mean, I can get into, but it really is a process of just listening to people talk. And I don't really start these films. I knew I wanted to make a film, something about this stuff, but I didn't know what that meant, and that's fine. Because what I do is I listen to people, and that kind of drives the story. And you know, and it wasn't, well, Debbie Almontazer told me about it, as did Abir. It was actually someone else first who started talking to me about 9/11 and the difference between 9/11, the first apocalypse, and this new apocalypse for the Muslim American community. And I said, well, okay, that's really interesting. And as someone that doesn't know this community, I mean, on one hand, it could be read to be that, you know, who am I or what do I know? But I actually have spent a lot of years making films about things I don't know a lot about. And it's not false modesty, it's kind of true. And I do think there's a lot to be said for like being a fresh barometer and kind of taking things in, and it does make me a little better just read on what's fascinating, whereas there's something I know a lot about. I know too much in a sense. So I would just meet people, and ironically, like maybe, you spend time filming with some people, it's not working, and almost halfway through the project, one woman, a young activist, she was 17, and she was amazing, but it just wasn't working. I just had no access, and she would only call me back at like 2 in the morning, which is not really, it was like uncomfortable. And her father hated me, so I just didn't think this was going to work. And I was talking with her, and she said, there's this guy in Sunset Park, this group of Muslims giving back. You should get in touch with them because they're working with helping immigrant groups. So I called up Mohammed Bai, and he said, yeah, come out. And of course, so I didn't start filming with him until I was almost halfway done, but he was just like an open book, as you can see, and very, very welcoming, as his family was very welcoming. So I try to go into it just very open and reacting to things as they happen. So it tends to, people present themselves to me.
Great, thank you. So Matt, tell us a little bit about your work with Bend the Arc, and also if you could specifically speak to the history of your organization around the Muslim ban and ways you've addressed Islamophobia.
Thanks. So first, thanks to the festival for inviting Bend the Arc to speak there, and thank you, Adam, for the really incredible film and all the folks who shared and worked through that with you. It was really great to see. So Bend the Arc is an organization that unites and mobilizes the Jewish community around the issues of Islamophobia, xenophobia, white supremacy, racism, and anti-Semitism. And we really believe that in order to show up for ourselves as Jews, we need to show up for others as well. So when it came to the Muslim ban and to Islamophobia in America generally, we know that this has been happening long before Trump came into office, but that things have gotten significantly worse since that started. And so when the Muslim ban happened, what we did was we believed that we had to follow the lead of those targeted communities. We need to follow the lead of Muslim folks who are showing up and saying, Jews, we need you to show up for us. We need you to get in the streets. And so that's what we did. We organized our community, we reached out to our community, and we said, show up at airports. And we continue to do that today. When Congress folks are being targeted for their Muslim identity, we show up for them. We work with folks in Congress. We submitted amicus briefs around the Muslim ban. So it's really all about showing up, like it was in the film, as ourselves, for others. Yeah.
Excellent. Is anyone here in the audience at SFO for the protesting of the Muslim ban when that happened? All right, a few people. I was there too. I'm curious if you could maybe both speak a little bit more into the role of Jews specifically in standing in solidarity with Muslims and beyond, maybe starting with you, Ed.
Well, there was a part of me that when I first started going out to meet Muslim people, I felt maybe there'd be some discomfort because I was Jewish, even more than because I'm non-Muslim. And in fact, I hate to generalize, but most everyone was so incredibly welcoming. And and a number of people said, and we're talking about leaders and just individuals, like, we really need you to know who we are. And we haven't done a very good job of that since 9/11. That it's really incumbent that if you come here and want to know us, we want you to know us. Literally on the level of, if you're respectful, any mosque, most mosques would be happy to show you around, answer any dumb questions, whatever you might have. So they were really, welcoming to me, but also welcoming to me as a Jewish person. As Shamsi Ali says, we're the closest religions, and we're the older brothers and sisters in faith. And there is, in terrible times, good things happen. So I do think this is really a golden age of Muslim-Jewish interfaith alliances, which doesn't mean there aren't bumpy spots. There are many, but there are so many. When large groups like AJC, which is like a large conservative or very established Jewish group, comes out with a Muslim-Jewish coalition, which they did right after the election, that's really significant. And as you can see in the film, there's a lot of groups that are Jewish that were really making it their point. And as Ben said, it's about showing up in many ways. And I mean, I'm not cynical or suspicious or jaded or anything negative like that, but I wasn't necessarily moved by that so much. And then after the tragedy in Pittsburgh at the synagogue, everybody I knew, both the organizations I had been dealing with and the individuals, they all called me up to tell me how sorry they were. And I mean, and I realized in the same way that, like, on the day of the Supreme Court decision, I just went up to my friends, these people that I've been working with, and said, I am so sorry. And they said, we know that, and we're so glad that you're here with us. And that's really what it's about, is being there. So.
Yeah, as Jews, Ben the Ark believes that we've seen this before. What is happening to Muslims with the Muslim ban, with the Islamophobia, what's happening with immigrants in our country being turned away, with refugees. We know that our ancestors, some of them were turned away, who could have survived what happened in Europe in the 1940s. And moving into today, we Jews have moved past that in a lot of ways. We've organized our community. We've built organizations that protect us, that help us to thrive, and we really have thrived in America. America is a really wonderful, safe place for Jews to live. And right now, we're also seeing moments where that safety is sort of fracturing with what happened in Pittsburgh, what happened in Poway. So we need to look to that history, and we also need to look to our shared texts. We have our Torah, which says 30 plus times to welcome the stranger, to welcome the refugee. So whether it's the history, whether it's the text, whether it's just our community, which has been so involved with fights around social justice for the past couple of years, decades, we need to look to that, and we need to say that we need to show up as ourselves for our Muslim brothers and sisters, for our immigrant brothers and sisters. We have the power and we need to use it.
Beautifully put, thank you. Was there a particular scene or moment in this film that resonated for you, given the work that you do?
Yeah, the scene where Abir, I believe it is talking about putting on hijab for the first time right around 9/11, and how just she had to make this choice between showing up as a religious person, as a faithful person, making a choice that is meaningful for her, or erasing herself and perhaps getting some safety from erasing herself, but being forced to do that. And I imagine a young Jewish person who might want to wear a kippah or wear a tzitzit, feeling the same way, where I might want to be more observant. I might want to show up as a Jew for people to see me, to let them know that I'm here and I'm proud, but feeling like that could put my life in danger. I just can't imagine being forced to make that choice, choosing between my faith and my safety. So it was just really hard to hear, and really brave of her to continue to wear hijab.
Thank you. Adam, what would you say was the biggest challenge in making this film, or one of the greatest challenges you experienced?
Well, I'll answer that in two ways, one having to do with storytelling, one having to do with filmmaking. And it's very hard to make films, honestly. I mean, it's challenging. There's never funding. There's never... It's a lot of work, but it is the greatest thing in the world. So I am very, very appreciative of getting to do it. I'm very, very appreciative of getting to tell exactly the story I want to tell. And I'm really fortunate. Storytelling-wise, I didn't realize until this screening. I mean, I've made two previous independent films, and the first one was about these activists in Greensboro, North Carolina, who some of whom had been murdered, or whose spouses, had been murdered, and were putting on the first Truth and Reconciliation Commission, and it was a very kind of political social justice film. And the next film was actually a Jewish film about identity, about 4 young women in Poland rediscovering their Jewish identity, who were raised Catholic, and it was all about their lives. So this film was a combination. So I was trying to make a film that had this political component of something that was happening as I was working, But I just didn't want to make a film about the Muslim ban. And it was really clear to me even before the Muslim ban, unfortunately, took place, and one couldn't even have imagined it. I knew I wanted to make a film about people because that's what really I'm drawn towards, and I really want to tell the stories of people and expose them to people who don't know them. So therefore, I wanted to do both things at once. And in some cases, like in the case of Debbie Almontazer, it was sort of simple because her politics are her life. But with someone like Mohammed Bai or Colbert, it's sort of different because it's not, while they feel very strongly, they live their life in a different way. So it was how to have both the political and the intimate going on in the same film. And there's no one solution, but that was something I wrestled with a lot. I shot a lot of rallies, and they begin to become a little monochromatic and kind of cancel each other out. So how do you really find the moments that make it land? As a filmmaker, I'm an editor, and I edit a lot of films, and I've been doing that for a long time, and I've also edited my own films, which is challenging, but I really embrace it and love it, and get to save a minimum of $100,000 because no one will work for my rate, which is zero, so that's really good. But this film, I chose to film it myself, which I've never done in my life. I've never filmed anything since I made art films in my 20s with a Bolex. So I didn't know anything about cameras. I had to learn gear and learn how to shoot. And so, yeah, that was challenging itself, although it was a great new thing to do. But what's challenging about it more than that was the thing of editing your own films is there's only one brain in the room, and I really don't delude myself into thinking I know everything. It's really hard without having someone else there to bounce ideas off of, and I solve that by having a lot of great colleagues and filmmaking friends that I bring in at select moments, and that was good. But being the shooter also was one less brain to be in the room and one less person to bounce ideas off of. And also, sometimes editors will get attached to things and not want to lose scenes because they love the craft of the editing or the transition. And I don't do that because I cut a lot, and I think I've gotten good at not getting attached to those moments. It's all about the story. But the shooter in me, who was struggling to make the film in the first place, when I finally got a scene that looked the way I wanted, I was really attached to it. So, and at times when I knew deep inside somewhere that it wasn't really helping the story. And eventually, I like to think I kind of worked that out. But the various hats that I was wearing were all fighting with each other. So that was a real challenge and learning experience.
Thank you for sharing that. I'd love to know from both of you, it's Take Action Day. So what is the action? What is it that you would like everybody in this theater to walk out thinking about or potentially doing as a result of seeing this film?
I have two things. One, my boss would be really upset if I didn't plug the Jeremiah Fellowship, which is the program that I run. It's a 6-month organizing and education intensive for young people, 22 to 32. We operate nationally to bring folks in cities all over the country together around progressive organizing causes, fighting Islamophobia, fighting xenophobia, among many. And yeah, if you know young people in the Bay Area or in many other cities, definitely send them our way. And then Bend the Arc more generally, we're working on a major campaign called Defund Hate, which is working to reduce and limit the funding, the $24 billion budget that the immigration agencies in our country have. We work with Congress, we work on the grassroots basis, and this is not just an issue that helps immigrants from Latin America. Immigrants are coming from all over the world, refugees and asylum seekers from predominantly Muslim countries included. Yes, we're working to limit the funding that is used to really restrict immigration to our country, and that's a great way you can get involved. You can go to bendthearc.us to see how you can plug in, and we have a local San Francisco chapter. Is anyone involved in our local San Francisco work? Maybe? I'm seeing a hand or two. It's really easy to get involved, and we really lean on our volunteers to lead the way there. Yeah.
Thanks.
I'll throw out two ideas also. First of all, I just want to add that, or point out that Mahida Al-Hussein from Muslim Advocates was supposed to be with us today, ran into scheduling conflicts. We couldn't do that. And I say that because I encourage ultimately everyone to get involved and to reach out to more Muslim organizations. Not that there's anything wrong with Bend the Arc, and in fact, it doesn't almost matter where you're getting engaged as long as you do. But I do think in the spirit of Interfaith Alliance, it's important to show up, and you can learn a lot about what's going on in those communities. Muslim Advocates is a really good place. They're local. They're national. They have a local office. CARE is the largest American Islamic relations, largest entity of that sort in the country, and they have a large presence in the Bay Area, and Asian Law Caucus. These are all good places to sign up for their newsletters online and find out about actions that are taking place and about how you too can come out, which I think is really important. And on a broader level, I'd be remiss if I didn't point out that in maybe 15 plus months, there's going to be an election in this country, and you'll probably guess who I would vote for, and I don't need to talk about that. But it's really clear to me that, before that, there's going to be a primary, and I'm sure we'll all have candidates that we support, men and women that we would like to be the Democratic candidate. And at the end of the day, only one person is going to be that candidate. And when it comes down to it, in 15 plus months, you're going to have a choice between the hate-filled fascist and the person who isn't a hate-filled fascist. And that's a really easy choice to make. So it may not be the perfect choice, but it's the only choice you got. And I've been hearing most of my life that this is the most important election of your life, but this is clearly the most important election of my life. So please come out.
Yes. Amen to that. I think we have a little bit of time for some questions from the audience. If anybody would. Okay, I see someone right up here in the blue. Yeah, just wait for the mic for me, please.
We're going to have a question right in the center here, and I'll hold this for you.
It's a little bit of an announcement, but I think Ben the Ark might be involved with the interfaith gathering that happens the second Friday in front of the immigration building to support immigrants and denounce the detention camps, et cetera. And so I just want to let people know, is it the second Friday of each month? And I think the next one is August 9th. And I think it's at 11:30 or 12:30. Is Ben the Ark one of the participants in that interfaith group?
I'm not sure, but it sounds great and important, and you should show up regardless of whether or not Ben the Ark is officially involved. Yeah, Lights for Liberty is a really great organization that has sprung up in this moment that is also really worthy of all of your support.
We have a question, house right, halfway back.
Okay, thank you. I have a feeling that there was not a minion of Trump supporters today, nor will there be at other screenings. I wonder if you thought of showing this or trying to get people of the other side, perhaps, who really are true believers, but also maybe decent people, and to try to get them to see this. Have you tried to show it to anybody? Perhaps there could be empathy circles afterwards. Thank you.
Well, that's a good question, and I haven't really thought a lot about that, and I'd be the first to admit that I'm another symptom of what happens in this country, which is that I usually talk to people that are like me, and that's really not a good thing. Having said all that, I think it would be a hard sell, and I'm happy to talk to people, the mythical people that are, that's not fair, the reasonable people that, you want to talk about tax policy or governmental input or things like, I think we can talk. But, if you want to talk about hate and bigotry, I don't really have a lot to say to you. I'm really more concerned. I would like that to happen, and I would probably need a lot of help to bring that about. But since you bring it up, I am very concerned and engaged and committed to getting the film into more situations like this, or actually even more than just in film festivals. I'm doing a series of things where we'll bring a synagogue and a mosque together and have a screening and a discussion afterwards, or a Hillel at a college campus and an MSA, a Muslim Student Association, or a JCC and a Muslim Community Center, to bring people together that way. And I would really be interested in what you're talking about. I'm not very optimistic, but it's something I sincerely appreciate your bringing it up, because I haven't put it on my plate.
Great, and we have a question, house right on the aisle.
Yes, thank you, Adam. It's a wonderful film and a great introduction for many of us to the American Muslim community. And I wonder whether you've shown this film to some of the main characters, main people in your film, and if what they thought of it, and if there was anything specific that they wish had been shown that wasn't.
Absolutely. All the films I've made, I always tell people I'm going to show you the film when it's almost done, the principal people. And with the understanding that I already have a release, I don't have to change anything, but that if there's something there I'm happy with, I really want to know. And it's funny, because every time I bring it up when I get to the end of the film, and it might be 4 or 5 years we've been filming, and I tell them, okay, would you like to see it? They say, oh, really? You'll show it to me? I said, yeah, I did promise you that. They never remember. So with this film, everybody saw it, and I had some apprehension more in terms of what you were saying, not that, oh my God, I look terrible, or you painted us so poorly. I mean, I didn't really think that was possible, truly, but more, we really wish you had done more of this or more of that. And there was really no feedback like that. Everybody was very, very positive. And we had spoken every now and then about how I was an outsider and how I wasn't of the community, and they thought that, and in some circles, in the independent documentary film world, there's a young Muslim, a Pakistani-American filmmaker who was making a film on a not terribly dissimilar subject, and I know about her. She knows about me. Abir is in both of our films. Abir knows that. And Abir said, you're doing what you're doing, and I want to try to give over to everyone who's going to help tell this story. And I'm sure my film is different than this other film, and Abir said, I really like what you did. So the answer briefly, not that the film is perfect or perfect in their eyes, but they had no one said, oh gosh, I wish there was more rallies, or I wish there was more talking or things like that. So I was pretty happy with the response. I was mildly nervous because some people took a long time to get back to me, but then they really were really positive, so that was great.
We have a question, house right back row.
I want to thank you for a very wonderfully made and inspiring film. It's a film I really would hope that could be shown in Europe, because I don't know if you are aware that there is a rise in anti-Semitism in Europe at this moment, in part fueled by the Muslim refugees in Europe. And I would love to see this film shown there to sort of head off what's happening in Europe at this time.
Well, thank you. I mean, there has been interest already in Turkey and in Germany and in England in distributing the film, and we're talking. We'll see what'll happen. I find it interesting that I think that the reason there's interest is that it is kind of reflecting what's going on in the United States now, and immigration policy and immigration realities in Europe are very different than they are in the States, as well as the reality of anti-Semitism. So, I too hope it gets to be seen broadly, and I can engage with audiences there, is all I can say.
We have a question in the center.
Thank you so much. That was superb. Nothing less than superb. My question's a little bit hard for me, honestly. Involves some feelings to ask out loud, but I'm going to anyway. Just as I'm very pro-American or U.S. and not of our current government, I'm similarly very pro-Israel and not of the current government. I'm wondering what advice any of the three of you on the stage might have for me as I get more involved in going to local iftar gatherings and things like that, or Bend the Arc events, in terms of what I should think through in advance about what I might not want to say, or at least the responses I'm going to get. I'm somebody who usually will try to comfortably talk to people who don't necessarily think like me, because I think that's where good work is available to do. So I'm curious if any of the three of you have advice to me about things I should think about in advance, please.
I'd be interested to hear what other people have to say as well. I shared some sense. I think Israel is kind of a line in the sand for some of these interfaith coalitions and alliances that we talk about, but I really think it's important to talk and to talk about differences and to kind of tease out exactly where, I mean, support or not support is very monolithic, and it's usually much more nuanced than that. But, you know, I don't mean to quote anyone. I mean, Linda Sarsour works a lot of Jewish groups, and yet she's vehemently opposed by many Jewish groups also. And, you know, everybody on our side of the fence, however you want to put that, we don't agree on everything, but we agree on a lot of things, and it's really important to talk about the things upon which we don't agree. So I personally think honesty is always the best policy, respectful honesty, and to see where that gets you.
I'll echo everything that you said, and say that Bend the Arc is a domestic organization. We focus on what is happening here in our country with what we can control here. And when we show up as Jews, we show up as American Jews, and we show up for what the communities that call us to do this work need. And we leave it at that, and we don't bring our personal elements in to that extent. And certainly members of Bend the Arc have their feelings on the issue of Israel that are like their own, and that is welcome. But when we're showing up for the Muslim ban, like the issue of Israel is not our priority at that moment. And I think it's important to remember that for the most part, American Jews right now are not being targeted in the same way that Muslim folks are. So we need to show up fully for them and sort of hold our personal needs after that. Yeah.
I really appreciate that. I have no advice to offer. I commend you for engaging in an open and non-judgmental dialogue. I think that puts you light years ahead of most already. So if anything, I have more to learn. Thank you for sharing that.
Okay, and we have a question, front row, house right.
Hi, I'm David Lamble with the Bay Area Reporter, the gay paper in town. I like the intimacy of the film. I thought it captured New York really well. Do you have plans for theatrical distribution that will include the Bay Area? And if so, when would it open?
Well, I've just recently finished the film, and this is the first showing, so thank you for being here. So it's all new. I've spoken to a couple of distributors. We'll see what happens. I mean, documentary is a twofold process, as Nico knows as well as anyone, that first you struggle really hard to make the film, and then you struggle pretty hard to kind of get it out there into all the interested audiences. And I am interested in pursuing, all opportunities that exist. So that's a pretty vague answer, but that's all I got for you. But thank you.
Stay tuned, in other words.
Thank you.
Is there a website we can check up on?
www.americanmuslimfilm.com, and please do come there. And on the Facebook page, news is always posted, and actually sign up, and I will be sure to keep you abreast of things happening in your community.
Excellent.
And we have a final audience question, house left on the aisle.
Well, people have already asked my question, but I do want to say that I think it should be shown in like every high school in America, number one. And I just wanted to say, you told the story perfectly. Everything was perfect the way you told it. Thank you so much.
Well, there's not much more I can say to that, so thank you very much. And thank you all for being here so much.
Yes, thank you for coming. And come back. We have films here all day long.